The interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. The veteran's name is Charles W. Norton. He was born December 30th, 1922. He served in the Air Force during World War II, Korea, and the Vietnam conflicts. He achieved the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. We are recording this on April 1st, 2014. My name is Austin Mall, and I'm conducting the interview. I have no relation. Mrs. Norton is also in the room to help with the interview. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
Mr. Norton, thank you for taking time to sit down with me, invite me to your home. So far, it's been very fun. It's nice to get away from campus for a little bit, as you can imagine. Now, let's go back real quickly, and we can get to the flight training. I want to hear a lot more about that, and talk about what you remember, if anything, from growing up in Mullins, South Carolina, where you were born. Is there anything you remember? How many siblings you had? And also what your father or mother did.
Well, I was, like most boys in a little country town, we played football and baseball, and that was the main thing in our lives. And then we realized that we were going to have to go into the service because it was that we just knew it. We had to go into the service, and what happened then?
Well, talk about why did you know you had to go in the service? What was happening? Tell us about the reaction to December 7th and Pearl Harbor, and how you decided to enter into the Air Force. Why was the Air Force of interest to you?
Well, I knew I was going to have to go into the service because, gosh, I can't remember all the dates.
That's okay.
December the 7th.
Huh?
When December the 7th happened, you knew you'd have to go in.
Yeah, I knew I was going to have to go into the service, into the military service, and I wanted that to be the Air Force. And so joined the Air Force.
Were you scared?
Huh?
Were you fearful?
Careful?
Were you afraid of what would happen when you entered in the service and fought in the war?
No, I wasn't afraid. I just wanted to be in the Air Force. I wanted to fly airplanes. I didn't want to wind up as a ground crewman in the Army or whatever. I wanted to go into fly airplanes. And let's see, it was flight instructors in the first training are the roughest, meanest guys in the world. God, they're rough. And they're telling you every day that you won't be around tomorrow. You're worthless. You gotta change. You gotta become a real hero if you want to stick this out. And every day they tell you, they shake the head and say, you gotta do better than this. Better at what they were doing, what they were trying to make us do. And let's see, what was it? They were after us all the time. The roughest, meanest instructors I ever had were flight instructors. Flight instructors, almighty, they made you realize you're not going to survive this. You are flunking out every day. You're just going to fall flat on your face one day. And finally, we went out to this field. We had 3 auxiliary fields that we would practice. We'd land, take off, land, and take off. And finally, we came to the point where, what did we do? He decided I was gonna land and take off, land and take off. And when you do 3 of them on the same airfield, you land 3 times. He came back to the cockpit and leaned over the cockpit and he said, I fly with you every day, and he says, you threaten my life every day. And he said, they always said, if I stay with you, you're going to kill me, so forth, so on. They were making me feel like I was washing out every day. And finally, he told me, he said, okay, let's see if you can do it. You go up there and take off and land 3 times. And we've got this whole field and it's all yours, but you got to take off and land 3 times. You completed your initial checkout when you do that, and you just circle around the field on the ground till you get back, depending on where the wind is, and then you take off 3 times like that and land 3 times, and tack around to where the instructor is, and then he comes up to the cockpit, and when you get up, he gets up to the cockpit, he's taking his hat off, what you wear, you know.
Helmet?
It's what we wore.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he came up to the cockpit, you know, and I was looking down, and I looked over at him, and he said, what was it? He said, I've been flying with you. You had to do it within 8 hours. And he said, you have torn me up. He says, I didn't think I could ever take what you put me through. And he says, but you accomplished that. And so then he made me go up there and you taxi around the field, you take off and land 3 times, and that's it. You accomplished your checkout. And so then he came up on beside the airplane. I'm sitting in the cockpit.
Yes. Yep.
And he comes up to the side of it, and he says, "You have ruined me." He says, "Every day that we come out here and you take me up, and now you've he says, you gonna fly, yeah, to check out, to finish his instruction, you've got to fly around, taxi around the fleet."
Yeah, but you finally did it.
Huh?
You finally did it. You did the 3 times around.
Yeah, 3 times around and so forth. And he came and said, "Okay, you got it." And then I wonder what happens now. But I had finished checking out. And now it's just me flying round and round. But
So what happened next? You completed your training. Did you go off, and this is after you've played football at Furman for a year, gone to school at Furman for a year, but finished your training now, did you go fly any missions during World War II?
oh yeah. Let's see.
You helped start the Airlines. You were in the Air Force, but you helped start the Airlines in Europe. You remember? You were going all over Europe.
All over Europe, what do you mean?
You were flying the Airlines. You helped them start the Airlines.
This is during World War II?
It was World War II was over.
Okay, World War II.
But he was there to help start, and he flew in that what was that? Where they took food into what was it, Berlin airlift? What was that?
What?
The airline Berlin. They were having to take food into.
Well,
That it had a name. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
No,
I can't remember.
No
that.
problem. So, training, you finally made it past the instructor despite all odds and feeling like you were going to be washed out. Was there a relief, that you were finally done?
Yeah. Then I realized I've made it. So I didn't worry about it. There was no washout anymore. And oh man, what a relief. But for the ones who did wash out, didn't make it, it was the most cruel thing I've ever seen happen to men. Not cruel, it was the most terrible thing. It was see them wash out of cadets. You washed out, you couldn't fly anymore. And to see them wash out, it was the saddest thing. Nobody cried or nobody said anything, but everybody felt it for the washout. That was the worst thing that could happen to any of us, is to wash out. God, we hated that. And until you made it, you might wash out in a day, but the ones of us that made it, we were clear. The ones that didn't, they were
Yeah.
considered for another job in the Air Force, but they weren't going to be pilots. So we just took our chances, and some of us made it and some didn't.
Yeah.
When you got your wings, where did you go? Your first station? Was that where you and Rip and that other guy that was with you?
Let's see.
And from there you went to Europe. Those were the early days of your Air Force. You want to hear more about Korea?
Yeah, I mean, anything that the two of you can remember together would be great. So I think the story about how you got your wings is, you know, against all odds. That's a great
Yeah.
story.
Mm-hmm.
But when you were flying after that, because obviously flying is what you're passionate about. You did it for 30 years or so. What else, if anything, in World War II, in Korea or Vietnam? What were you doing as a pilot? Were you a fighter pilot? Were you going up against other planes, or were you supplying different bases, or maybe both?
I'm trying to make sense of this to put me where I was at that time. You know, once I had checked out, once I had flown so many times,
Yes.
it was,
Well, you went to Europe after you got your wings and all. And you went to Europe. I don't know where you were stationed, but you helped start the airlines over there. Y'all were flying, and Rick kept at you to come on, go back to school. He was going to law school, and you wanted to go to take your engineering courses. So you
Rip?
could go. Rip.
wanted to take engineering courses.
No, Clemson told you to go ahead and didn't have room for you to join and go into architecture then, but to go ahead and take your engineering courses at Carolina, and then come to Clemson and get your degree in architecture. And so you got out and came back, and you were there until, doing a lot of flying, until Squadron career started, and the squadron was reactivated. And we went down to Fort Benning at Lawson Air Force Base. Was that it? Wasn't that Lawson?
Yeah. Fort Benning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was.
And then you went into jump school. They asked some of you if you would go into, I forgot what that was called. You had to go through jump school, so we went down there and you...
Jumping out of planes?
Uh-huh. They had to...
Yeah, they wanted some of us to jump out of. How did they work us into that? We were, if we would go through jump school,
Mm-hmm.
we would be more favorably considered
For
to,
jets.
huh?
For jets.
Yeah, to jets and so forth. Phew, golly, I'm acting like it was 100 years ago and I don't remember it.
That's okay.
Well, that's okay.
You're doing good.
Yeah, you're doing really well. And it was a little bit of time ago, but do you remember anything about jumping out of an airplane? Because that sounds a little bit crazy to me. But I'm sure that you enjoyed it, or I hope that parachute, it obviously worked.
They weren't going to let everybody go through what we did. If you didn't go through jump school, you weren't favorably considered as well as the guys who did go through jump school. So there was a whole bunch of us who we're going whatever it takes. We'll eat snakes if we have to, but we're going through. And
these men were a little old. Chuck was about 22, 23 then, I guess. And there were a lot of 18-year-olds. And
Okay.
these men sometimes had to help these 18-year-olds when they had to run so far.
Yeah.
He loved to tell that story about helping young men. And from there we went, I can't remember where. That's when we went to Fort Bragg at Lawson Air Force Base.
I guess so. I don't remember.
But then he was sent to Korea for a year. I didn't hear his voice
For a
for a whole year. They didn't call on telephone, and of course they didn't have emails and
Yeah.
like that, you know. And I had two. You see, Wes was 2 years old, 2.5, and Suzanne was 1.5. But I went back to Columbia where my family was, but I felt so sorry for him because I had the children, you know, and he missed them terribly. He said he couldn't have gotten through it if I hadn't sent him so many pictures.
Well, that's good.
And then what? Oh, then you went to ROTC instructor. That was not that important, I don't guess. But I guess Vietnam was, then they sent him to, let me see, I forgot what you were flying, but no, you're flying the 124, the cargo. He was back and forth. He was gone all the time. He was Europe, downrange to Brazil. And then the Air Force, so he had a lot of engineering from after World War II, and sent him to Ohio State, and he finally got his degree.
Okay. Went back to Ohio State. And
Geodetic science. He
Okay.
says he'd rather be in combat. They had to take a course like that again.
doesn't sound easy.
And from there they put him in B-52s.
Okay.
After
Bomber?
we were in Omaha, Offutt Air Force Base, and then we checked out in the B-52, and we went down to Goldsboro, North Carolina, and then from there it was Vietnam. But he didn't go to Vietnam. He went to the runway was not long enough at Vietnam or something. The B-52s couldn't land it on Vietnam. They went to Thailand and also Guam.
Okay.
And he was sent to Guam. He was a squadron commander by then, and they made him. He just continued his being a squadron commander.
Good.
Did I leave anything out?
I don't know.
That's all right.
But that's when he decided he was gonna retire.
Yeah.
He'd reached, and go back, well, I talked him into going back to school to study architecture. That's why we came up here.
Okay.
And first year he was by himself. Second year, Rip joined him, and at one time we had 3 of them, Chuck and 2 children.
Okay.
But we managed.
Yeah. Good.
And then he worked for Fleur Daniel about 8 years, I guess, 8 or 9 years. Then he retired to painting and golfing. We live on a golf course.
Okay.
So he retired to those 2 things.
To
And
golfing.
these are his paintings.
Incredible. Well, what was it like transitioning 30 years in the military and then doing civilian work, being a civilian? How different, not traveling across the world. Was it an easy transition or nice being home more?
You know,
He liked being home. And the children, of course, loved having him home. But then, of course, once they finished college, they ran away. So
Yeah, that's the way it works.
I know it.
yeah, but
I feel like I took over the interview.
No. This is perfect. Okay. It's just casual conversation.
you know, my troops had this cap made for me, and
At Guam.
my rank was lieutenant colonel, and this was just embellishing, and it had my name on the back. I never did find out who did it, but they had one of the troops that could do it.
In Guam, wasn't it? And they gave you that?
I don't know. I've forgotten it.
Okay, I know it.
The more I try to remember and say something that makes sense, the more I realize how much I've forgotten.
I know it.
I've forgotten.
That's okay.
So, but my troops gave me this cap, and
What is the eagle? Do you know what the eagle means on the side? On the side of the cap, there's looks like 5 stars
That
or
was
for
so.
this,
Yeah.
this was the Squadron Insignia.
Okay.
That was 51st. The squadron was 51st Bomb Squadron, and you see 51st,
Okay.
5 and 1, 51st Bomb Squadron.
How'd you get into painting? Have you always enjoyed painting?
I've always been into drawing and painting since I was that high. Yeah, I just always drew and painted when I was just a little old boy. I was drawing and painting.
And my oldest daughter is an artist also. And none of the boys take after you, I don't think.
What do some of your children do now?
Let's see, West is
Or
in,
what did they do?
well, West, my oldest, had a scholarship to University of North Carolina football, and he is now though in construction, and in fact he's down at Fort Bragg working. His company does a lot of military, a lot of defense work,
Okay.
and they're building a 4,000 or something, a huge building. And he goes back home, he lives in Virginia. And then, who's next? Suzanne, she's not married, she's divorced. And she lives with us, and she teaches.
Okay.
And she has no children. The West has a son. Who's next? Rip was in the Navy. he finished Clemson too, but he was in the Navy. And Bob finished Clemson, and he finished in building construction, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure, but I think is that the name of it, his,
Is what the name of it?
what Bob got his degree in? Building construction of something,
Okay.
something like that.
That's very
And then
cool.
Mary Lou, our youngest, lives in Arlington, Virginia, and her two oldest children, two girls, and then they have finished college. They went to a college in Ohio,
Okay.
and then their son is also he's a sophomore this year
Okay.
at the same college that the girls went to,
Wow.
and we stopped there.
Wow. That's a good bit. That's a lot.
I feel like I
No.
had an interview, but I didn't say too much.
No. It was a good conversation. The one other thing I'll ask if there's anything else you'd like to add. Now would be a good time. And also, what's the word serving means to you? We all serve in different ways, but going into the service, it's direct service. And how important you think serving was during World War II for all you and your friends who you said that you all knew that you were going to have to do it, and how important that was to you back then to go ahead and serve.
Knowing that we had to go in the service eliminated any questions. Yeah, you're going in and you're going to serve until this thing is over, or we don't need you anymore for whatever reason. And
So you said you knew your name was coming up.
huh?
You knew your name was coming up, and you didn't want to go in the army, and that's why you wanted to fly.
Mm.
And he went and
Yeah, that's a
went on
difference.
and that he was accepted and all. You said you didn't want to be in the army.
Yeah, I didn't want to be in the Army, and I didn't want to be in the Navy, but I wanted the Air Force.
Good.
From the very beginning, I wanted the Air Force. And so I went into the Air Force.
Good. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I'll go ahead and shut this off, and we can talk. I want to ask about some of these pictures and paintings.
Oh,
Like this
that's
one.
something was on.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have been interrupted if I'd known that. But my two